Sure, here is section 1, 760 words, of the infidelity story, written in a direct, emotionally resonant, and concise manner, as per your request. I never imagined that one day I'd look back at a chapter of my life and feel equal parts shame and clarity. It was a part I've never shared with anyone, not even my husband. If you met me today, you'd think I've always been the steady, responsible woman I appear to be. But a few years ago, I was someone else. Someone I barely recognize. And this story starts with loneliness. I had just moved to a new city after ending a 4-year relationship that had drained the life out of me. I wasn't heartbroken, I was just numb. Starting over in a new job, in a place where I didn't know anyone, I carried a silent desperation for something to make me feel alive again. That's when I met Ryan. He wasn't even supposed to be at the networking dinner. A last-minute substitute, someone said. He was older, confident without trying, and had this effortless charm that made it feel like the whole room faded when he spoke. We were seated near each other, and we exchanged polite jokes that turned into teasing, then more. That night, he asked if I wanted to continue the conversation over drinks. I hesitated. But I went. We didn't sleep together that night. We just talked. But something shifted in me. I hadn't felt seen in so long, and suddenly, here was this man who seemed to understand things about me without asking. The way he looked at me made me forget myself. It wasn't until later that I found out he was technically still living with his ex, Lila. "It's over," he said. "Just taking time to untangle things." I didn't ask many questions. I wanted to believe him. We started texting every day. Good mornings, good nights. Compliments that felt tailored. I told myself it was harmless. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Not yet. But the emotional weight was building. My best friend Zara noticed. One night over dinner, she asked straight up, "You're into him, aren't you?" I didn't answer. She looked at me for a long time and said, "Just don't lie to yourself." I told her I had it under control. I didn't. Ryan made me feel like I was the only one in his world, even though I knew he went home to someone else. I told myself they slept in separate rooms. That she was just a logistical complication. But a part of me already knew I was writing excuses instead of facing the truth. The night everything crossed the line, I had a terrible day at work. I texted him without thinking. "I need to get out of my head." He replied instantly, "Come over." I didn't hesitate. I told myself it was just to talk, just to feel less alone. But when he opened the door and I stepped inside, the silence between us spoke louder than anything. We both knew. Afterward, I sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor while he went to the kitchen. My stomach was tight. I wanted to believe it meant something, that it was the start of something real. But deep down, I felt sick. I didn't belong there. I had crossed a line I swore I never would. He returned, handed me a glass of water, kissed my forehead, and told me not to overthink it. That hurt more than anything. Not because he was cold, but because I knew he had done this before. I wasn't different. I was next. I didn't tell anyone. Not Zara. Not even myself, really. I just shoved the guilt down and kept going. The next morning, I smiled at my coworkers, made coffee, answered emails. It was like wearing someone else's skin. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he looked at me. The way he made me feel chosen. It's strange how something so wrong can feel so intoxicating. But that's the trap. It didn't matter that he wasn't mine. I wanted to believe he would be. I started justifying everything. We're in the in-between. Real life is complicated. I told myself lies that felt more comfortable than the truth. The thing is, when you're desperate to feel wanted, you overlook all the signs that you're being used. And when you've already gone too far, turning back feels like admitting failure. I wasn't ready to do that yet. Not then. I was still clinging to the hope that this messy beginning would somehow lead to a clean ending, but I had no idea how deep I was about to fall. He didn't ask me to keep it a secret, but I did. Something about the way he slipped back into his normal routine the next day made me realize I had to adjust myself to fit into his life, not the other way around. We kept seeing each other, mostly in his car, or at his friend's place when it was empty. He never invited me back to his apartment again. He said it was complicated with Lila still there. I stopped asking. I was too afraid of the answers. I started lying more. I told Zara I was working late. I cancelled plans. I told myself it was just temporary, that Ryan would eventually make space for me the way I was making space for him. But weeks passed. Then months. Nothing changed. His messages became shorter. Our meetups felt rushed. But I kept chasing the high I'd felt in the beginning, like it would come back if I just waited long enough. Zara noticed. She called me out again. "You're losing yourself," she said. I can't even recognize you lately. I told her I was fine, just tired. But the truth was, I wasn't sleeping. My mind wouldn't stop spinning. I felt like I was slowly unraveling. I wasn't just keeping secrets from others, I was lying to myself every single day. One night, Ryan cancelled on me last minute. He said Lila had a meltdown and he needed to be there for the dog, or maybe it was her job. I don't even remember anymore. It was always something. I spent that night staring at my phone, waiting for a message that didn't come. That's when I knew I wasn't important to him. I was just convenient. The next week, everything changed. I got a message from an unknown number. It was Lila. She wanted to talk. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd be sick. Part of me wanted to ignore it, block her, pretend she didn't exist. But I couldn't. I agreed to meet. She wasn't angry. That's what stunned me. She was calm, almost too calm. I'm not here to fight, she said. I just want you to know he did the same thing to me, with someone else before you. I didn't respond. I couldn't. She went on. He told me you were nothing serious. That it's just a phase he needs to get through. It was like someone flipped a switch. All the rationalizations, all the excuses, they shattered. I saw myself the way she saw me. Not as someone special, but as another name in a list. Another woman he used to patch a hole in his ego. After Lila left, I went straight to Zara's place. I didn't even knock. I just walked in and broke down. She held me but didn't say I told you so. She didn't have to. I admitted everything, every lie, every moment I'd buried. I told her I hated who I had become. She looked me in the eye and said, then stop being her. I didn't talk to Ryan for days. He messaged a few times, nothing emotional, just routine check-ins like nothing had changed. I ignored them. Finally, I agreed to meet, just to end it. When I told him I was done, he looked at me like I was overreacting. You're making this bigger than it needs to be, he said. We had fun. That's all it ever was. He said that with a straight face. Like none of it meant anything. Like I hadn't cried myself to sleep more nights than I could count, hoping he'd finally choose me. In that moment, I saw everything clearly. I was never going to be chosen. I was always temporary. I walked away without looking back. I blocked his number. Deleted every photo, every message. I scrubbed him from my life like a stain I couldn't bear to keep seeing. But the damage was already done. I had spent almost a year building my life around someone who never saw me as more than a distraction. The hardest part wasn't leaving him. It was facing the silence afterward. The quiet was deafening. No texts. No secret plans. No adrenaline. Just me and the weight of everything I'd allowed. I thought I'd feel free. I didn't. I felt hollow, but somewhere in that emptiness, a voice started to grow louder. It wasn't angry or cruel. It was honest. It asked me why I let myself be treated like an option. Why I ignored every red flag. Why I handed my self-worth to someone who didn't even value his own promises. I didn't have the answers yet. But I knew I couldn't keep running from the questions. I stopped trying to make sense of it. There was no closure, no moment of clarity where everything tied up neatly. Just silence. I poured myself into work. I kept busy, filled my days with tasks and my nights with distractions. But no matter how full my calendar got, the emptiness followed me. I wasn't mourning Ryan. I was mourning who I had become around him, someone I never thought I could be. Zara stayed close. She didn't push, just listened. I started therapy after a month. I walked in thinking I'd talk about him, but I ended up talking about myself. My patterns. My fear of being alone. The way I chased love like a prize instead of a partnership. I had always believed that if someone made me feel something intense, it must mean something real. I never stopped to ask if it was healthy. I just wanted to feel needed. Therapy was brutal at first. Every session peeled back a layer I'd been trying to keep buried. I realized I hadn't truly healed from the relationship before Ryan. I had carried the baggage forward and handed it to the next man who showed me attention. I wasn't just a victim of his lies, I had been dishonest with myself too. That truth was the hardest to swallow, but I kept showing up. Slowly, I started making different choices. I started saying no. Setting boundaries. I cut off people who only called when they needed something. I stopped performing for approval. I stopped chasing emotionally unavailable people. It wasn't dramatic or loud, it was small things. Not texting back. Leaving on read. Choosing peace over intensity. A year later, I met someone at a friend's dinner party. His name was Daniel. He was the opposite of Ryan in every possible way. He didn't say grand things or sweep me off my feet. He was quiet, consistent, present. At first, I mistook his calm for lack of passion. But over time, I realized this was what stability felt like: safe, not boring. He didn't play games. He didn't make me question my worth. With him, I didn't have to prove anything. I could just be. I never told him about Ryan. Not because I'm hiding it, but because it doesn't define me anymore. It was a part of my past that shaped me, not something I need to relive. Daniel knows I've made mistakes. He doesn't need the details to love me. And I don't need to confess to feel clean. I already did that, with myself. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I never met Ryan. Maybe I would have made other mistakes. Maybe I still would have found my way here. But part of me knows I needed to go through that fire to understand what I truly deserved. I needed to face the worst version of myself so I could choose better. I'm not proud of what I did. I'm not going to pretend it didn't hurt people, especially myself. Infidelity isn't just about crossing a line, it's about what drives you to step over it. For me, it was loneliness, insecurity, and a deep need to feel significant. I don't excuse it. I own it. But I also understand now that mistakes, even ugly ones, can be teachers if you're willing to face them. The guilt didn't vanish overnight. But it doesn't control me anymore. I've made peace with the silence. I've forgiven the girl I was: naive, reckless, desperate for love. She didn't know better. But I do now. I no longer mistake attention for affection or intensity for intimacy. I learned that real love doesn't confuse you. It grounds you. People think infidelity is always black and white. Someone cheats, someone gets hurt, and someone walks away. But the truth is, it's often murky. It starts with unmet needs, buried pain, silent compromises. By the time you realize how far you've gone, the damage is done. But even then, it's not too late to come back to yourself. Daniel and I are married now. He still doesn't know the full story, and I don't think he needs to. He loves the woman I became after it all, the woman who faced her darkness and chose not to stay there. And I love the woman I am today because I earned her. Piece by piece, mistake by mistake. Some people carry their secrets like a weight. I carry mine as a lesson. A reminder of who I never want to be again. I don't need to revisit that chapter, but I'll never erase it. It happened. It mattered. And it changed everything. I used to think healing meant forgetting, like moving on required erasing everything that happened. But I've learned it's not about forgetting, it's about integrating. I don't hate the version of me who fell into that situation. I see her now with compassion, not judgment. She was in pain. She was searching. And she chose the wrong person to soothe that ache. That doesn't make her evil. It makes her human. There are days I still flinch at certain memories. A specific ringtone. A turn of phrase. A place I used to pass on my way to meet him. They don't sting like they used to, but they linger. What surprises me is how little power those memories hold now. They're not raw. Just quiet reminders. Warnings, maybe. I've stopped resenting them. My relationship with Daniel is honest, not perfect, but honest. That alone feels like a luxury I never valued before. We argue, sure, but it's never about secrets or power games. It's about small things, real things. He shows up for me in ways I never had the courage to ask from anyone before. And I show up differently too, not to prove my worth, but because I value what we are building. Sometimes I think back to the moment I met Ryan and wonder what would have happened if I had walked away. But that question doesn't bother me anymore. What matters more is that I didn't stay there. I didn't make a temporary mistake into a permanent identity. I could have. So easily. There was a point where I almost believed that chaos and craving were what love should feel like. Now I know better. Love doesn't leave you anxious. It doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't live in secrecy. If I'm honest, the scariest part wasn't losing Ryan or admitting I was wrong. The scariest part was facing the silence he left behind. Because it forced me to sit with myself, and I didn't like who I'd become. That's the part no one talks about. After the affair, after the fallout, what's left isn't just regret. It's identity collapse. You have to rebuild from ground zero. And no one applauds that work. There's no redemption arc when you're alone in your room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how you ended up so far from who you wanted to be. But if there's one thing I know now, it's this: you can come back. You can return to yourself, no matter how far you've strayed. You just have to be willing to stop lying, to everyone, but mostly to yourself. Zara and I are closer than ever. It took time. She had to rebuild her trust in me, and I had to prove I could be someone who tells the truth even when it's ugly. Friendships survive betrayal when both sides decide to show up with open hands instead of closed fists. She didn't walk away from me when she easily could have. I'll never forget that. Lila moved on, too. I saw a photo of her once, smiling next to someone new. There was a part of me that felt relief, but also something else, gratitude. She didn't owe me kindness when she reached out. But she gave it. And that was a strange kind of grace. In a story filled with wrongs, she chose to speak from a place of clarity, not vengeance. That taught me more than any apology could. I haven't spoken to Ryan since the day I walked away. He became a ghost in my history, one I don't chase, but I also don't deny. I don't need an apology from him. I don't need revenge. The real closure was choosing a different life. The real justice was becoming someone he could no longer reach. Looking back, it wasn't just about infidelity. It was about identity. About learning the difference between being desired and being loved. Between attention and affection. Between validation and value. I learned that self-respect isn't loud, it's quiet. It's walking away without drama. It's choosing not to answer the text. It's choosing you. Now, when I talk to younger women who feel stuck in something similar, I don't lecture. I just ask, do you feel peace when you're with him, or just relief when he shows up? That question says everything. Because love should feel like presence, not absence temporarily filled. The woman I am now has boundaries. She trusts her gut. She doesn't negotiate with red flags. She isn't perfect, but she's rooted. And most importantly, she knows she's enough. Without games. Without secrecy. Without needing someone else to validate her worth. That hidden chapter of my life taught me more than any clean one ever could. It showed me who I was, who I never want to be again, and who I have the power to become. And for that, I'll never be proud, but I'll always be honest.